So last night, the Washington Wizards made a lot of moves on draft night. For starters, they traded Denny Avdia to the Portland Trail Blazers, and they also were able to get Bub Carrington with the 14th pick, and they were also able to make some moves, and they were able to get Kyshawn George as well. So I feel like the Wizards have obviously made a lot of moves to try and obviously to try and go younger, but I still think that they also have a lot of players right now who they can build around. But what are your guys' thoughts about the Wizards draft haul?
Yeah, I really like what they did. I feel like Alex Sarr, I feel like in an odd way, it's kind of like their pick I'm most wary about a little bit. I like Alex Sarr, but I think he's a little ways away from being like as effective. But on the Wizards, who project to be bad for a pretty long time, like he has enough room to make all the mistakes he wants. So I feel like his management was probably smart to get him to fall there. Bub Carrington, he's one of the guys I was higher on in his class. Like he's one of the best pull-up shooters in college last year. I listened to like him break down film before the draft, and he really is like smart with his passing and counting the defenders that he can see in his way versus where everyone else is on the floor. And like some of his ball screen decision making is like really, really good. I think him and Poole actually fit pretty well together, and I'm interested to see if it works at an NBA level. And Kyshawn George, I think, is like one of my bigger upside swings in the draft. Like I had him in my lottery, and they got him way at the end of the first round. So I think they had a great night, and I think Wizards fans, they probably aren't happy because I mean they don't have much to be happy about in general. But I feel like they, over the next few years, like if this draft hits I think it will, I think they should be well on their way to getting back to at least a middle of the pack team in the East.
Yeah, I feel like I'll start with the Denny Avdia trade. To me, this shows how in this franchise is on Bilal Coulibaly, just because it was him and Denny kind of at that small forward position, kind of on the wing outside of Kyle Kuzma. So I agree that they had to kind of decide on one of them, especially if they were going to add all of these new young pieces in this class. So pretty solid move to go move him to Portland and open up some space for Coulibaly to get a little bit more work in his sophomore season. But I do think while I like the pieces that they added in this class, taking a shot on Bub Carrington pretty high with that trade, we all knew going into this draft that he was one of the higher, offensive talents. It was just kind of the efficiency at times while at Pitt was down, and whether or not a team would take a shot on him at this point in the draft. Obviously, Alex Sarr was on a lot of people's boards as the number one player, but for whatever reason, he did not want to go to the Atlanta Hawks and be the number one pick. So Washington potentially gets the best player in the draft at number 2, just because he didn't want to go number 1. And then down at their final pick with Kyshawn George, that's just another big size on the wing that can potentially be a difference maker for them in the future. But I do think it is kind of weird for a Washington team that's trying to rebuild and retool around a lot of these pieces that they moved on from over the past year or so. I do think it is a little bit weird that they utilized this draft class as the one to go aggressive in. Maybe they're thinking that a lot of teams were low on some of these talents and that they saw this as an opportunity to go quickly grab a lot of young talent to start developing. I would have personally, instead of being so aggressive this year, waited until next year's class and tried to make some of these similar moves a year from now in a draft class that's expected to be a little bit stronger. But of the aggressive moves they made, I do think that they're probably going to hit on at least 2, if not all, of these picks to varying levels of success.
Yeah, I feel like I agree that next year's class is like way better, like top to bottom, but I don't know if they necessarily are able to trade like Denny Avdia for like a first round pick next year. Like I just think that value is a little bit different. I think everyone kind of like feels like 25 is a really good class. So I think you probably see less teams trading out of their picks. And I think if you buy into the guys they got, which I'm sure they did, or they wouldn't make the moves. Like I feel like they probably just thought it was better value to buy into this class than try to pay the exorbitant price for what a first round might be next year.
I want to go back to Alex Sarr, though, because obviously he was a guy who was projected to go to Atlanta, but he kind of forced his way out of there. He didn't work out with them, and now he's obviously fallen to the Wizards. But do you guys think that that was the right decision? Or do you think that he should have just went number one instead of trying to force his way to the Wizards?
To be honest, I kind of didn't understand it. Like, I get if you're the agent, if you think he's gonna be like a star, I guess, out the gate. Like if you think his potential is like Giannis Antetokounmpo one day or something like that, then I'm sure send him to the Wizards so he can take all the shots he wants. But to me, like if I was his agent, I would look at him and project his career. Most likely, like upside is probably Chet Holmgren right now. Like if he could ever get to where Chet is now, that would probably be a success. So I think I would probably go with like the Hawks personally. Like I think it was a much better fit. They have Trae Young, someone who can get him the ball. Like we seen what he did for Clint Capella's career. Like maybe you have less chances to create on ball if you go first, but like I think going two was way riskier. I feel like with one, he probably would have been like guaranteed to have like a 10-year career in the NBA.
Yeah, I feel like Sarr with the Wizards, it is definitely a worse situation. The Wizards are a lot further behind in their pursuit of a championship than the Atlanta Hawks, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's like a worse fit, I guess you could say, just because the Wizards have a lot of, like Cam, you said, a lot of open shots. I mean, outside of Jordan Poole, and maybe they want to get Bilal Coulibaly some more work, handling the ball next year. It's kind of up in the air. I mean, I guess you still have Kuzma that's maybe one of the oldest players on the team at this point, which is kind of crazy to think about where we are right now. But outside of that, I feel like Alex Sarr could kind of slide into that starting five. But I've also heard that he wants to be like a power forward almost at the NBA level. So it's going to be kind of a weird scenario if they try to add another big or play him alongside a center. But I feel like his more natural fit, just because he's not much of a shooter at this point, like it's potentially there, but as we sit right now, he's not like a stretch four by any means. So we'll see how quickly that jump shot comes along. But maybe over time, if he can figure out a little bit of a jumper, maybe they start to look at bringing in a true traditional five to let him kind of space the floor. But we'll have to see what the development looks like.
Yeah, I think his team may have slightly like overestimated how many shots are available with the Wizards. Now that you kind of went through their roster, like I don't think there's as many shots as he thinks there's going to be. Like, especially if they keep Kuzma, Jordan Poole is still there. You have Coulibaly, who I'm sure they'll want to get more shots this year. And Bub Carrington is like he'll pass the ball, but he's not afraid to shoot it either. Like, I don't think the wide open lane is as big as he thinks it is. Like, I think he'll still get like a decent amount of shots. I mean, he's the number 2 pick, but I think Atlanta may have been a better situation, especially if he does want to be like a 4 at the NBA level. I feel like they already have their guy at 5. Like Okongwu is like, they could either put him over Okongwu or play him with each other, especially if he thinks his shooting ability will translate quick. So, I mean, if you don't want to deal with the expectations of having to be on a team that's expected to win right away and you think he's further away, the Wizards make a little bit more sense. But I just feel like if you thought he was ready now, I would definitely try to push him to the Hawks just because they have Trae Young, who like he's one of those guards in the league, like a John Wall, like a Chris Paul, who like they just make your life so much easier as a big.